Good morning. Talk straight about the Bible, family. Just like Pastor Jeremiah Simmerfina say, I am here to talk straight about the Bible. I hope everyone is doing well. I have had this word on my heart for a while, and I hope it's going to come out the way that I have it in my head, the way that God has been giving it to me. If you just look around at everything going on in our world right now, right? We were closed down in 2020, and it seems to be that we opened up into this whole new world. I believe that this is probably the worst division and deception that our country has ever seen. We are being destroyed, I believe personally, from the inside out by man's agenda of greed and power and preying upon innocent people. And I've been praying through and thinking through that, and I don't know about you, but when I really think about it, it makes me really mad. It makes me really sad. It burdens my heart, which I know is what the Lord has for us sometimes, right? He wants to burden our hearts with the things that burden His so that we move into that place of prayer and warfare and change and standing for things, whatever that may look like. And so while I was going through Nehemiah, if you're not versed on the book of Nehemiah, it's basically he is called to rebuild these walls, this destruction that happened. He's called to rebuild it, and he encounters this destruction and all these people plotting evil around him, just trying to withhold him from what God has for him to do that's for the good of the people. And so in Nehemiah 4, verses 4, it just spoke to my heart, and I have been diligently praying this prayer repeatedly for probably a couple months now. And Nehemiah prays to God, and he says, God, we are hated. Turn the insults of Sanballat and Tobiah back on their own heads. Let them not be able to hide from the guilt of their sins, and let them be known. Let their swords be turned back on them. And so when I think of that, I am trying to find good in all of this chaos, and I'm starting to see where things are starting to get exposed, right? The word says that the darkness cannot hide from the light. And so I am seeing and hearing of these things that are now being exposed, and I am believing that this is God being true to His word. Like, these people that we are supposed to trust are put in these high places, but they are being deceived by greed and power, and so they are using that to think that they're fooling all of us, and God sees this evil, and I believe He's answering the prayers of His people by saying, this is not happening in a nation that was founded under me for my purposes, that I am going to overturn. Like, I've let this go on long enough because I believe that there are certain things that God had to allow happen so that people's eyes could be open to see just the evil and the corruption that there is. And so I believe we're seeing a time where God is being true to His word of like, yeah, I am going to turn their insults back on their own heads. I mean, look what we just saw with what happened at Martha's Vineyard. Look at everything coming out right now with the vaccines. And I might be touching on some sensitive things here, but I just got to speak out the truth of what I'm feeling in my spirit. And I will always be true to that and never water it down. So I hope that you can understand that place. But there's just a lot of things that our government has done to deceive the people. A lot of things that have not been right. I mean, the things going on right now with the whole transgender movement of these hospitals that are actually willing to do these surgeries and castrate innocent kids for their own pockets. I believe God's starting to expose all of it because He's not going to have any of it. But our eyes also needed to be opened in the meantime, and I believe people are beginning to stand. And so it reminds me of the verse then when you get further in Nehemiah 4:14. And it talks about we have to fight. We don't need to be afraid of them, and we don't need to be afraid of their power, but we have to fight for our homes and our families and our spouses and our world. What does that look like for you? We all have a place in this where we can stand and we can fight, and it doesn't mean fighting and being ugly and yucky. We are supposed to walk in love, but we are also supposed to speak in truth. And I think that the church, forgive me again if I say the truth of what I feel, but the church has become watered down. The church is tickling ears. The church is worried about the money that's walking in the door or may not walk in the door, and so they're careful with what they say. But it's hindering God's army right now, because the truth that should be being spoken is, yes, we are supposed to walk in love, but we are also supposed to speak truth and fight and stand up for those things that are right. God tells us in His Word, like, we're supposed to, go to help the widows and feed the poor and stand for those who can't speak on their own. All of those things, we're seeing that now. And we're either going to stand and take our rightful places where God leads us each to stand, or we're going to see much more of the same. I believe that's why we are kind of where we are, is because we've laid dormant for so long. And I believe God's calling His army to rise up. I believe we're seeing it. So this message, I hope, is an encouragement, because there's so much doom and gloom and yuck every day that's out there. But we can take hope in the Lord, in His Word, that prayer Nehemiah prayed, that God will defend the innocent. He will protect His people. He will use us as we speak out and stand to give us favor in high places. And so I hope this is encouraging in that place where there's so much darkness, that we can shift perspective and see the light and see how God's working in it and how He's going to continue to get the victory no matter what it looks like. Keep praying. I even encourage you to pray that prayer with me repeatedly. Like, the best thing we can do is be on our knees interceding for our government. Their eyes would be open and come to Christ. There would be conviction upon them when they sleep at night, that His name would be made famous in all of this. And I believe that that's going to happen. And I believe that as we go through these tragic times that are getting more and more dark, I believe it's an opportunity for more and more people to come to know Christ. Because I don't believe most people want to live in this place of darkness, want to live in this place of hopelessness. And they get to a point where they're like, I can't do this anymore. How do you do this? How do you get through this? How do you make sense of this? And that's our place where we get to share the truth about God and share our testimony with people and lead them to a hope that is beyond this world, that gives them a place in eternity, that gives them a different perspective to look at other than the fear-mongering and the deception, and it gives them a place to have open eyes. We have a huge part in that, but it comes from a place of standing and fighting for our homes, our marriages, our spouses, our community, our world, our nation. We have to stand. We have to speak. And we've been silent for too long. And I don't know, I think that's all I have. I think it's to the point. I feel like it's what God's just been nudging on my heart, but I haven't had the words to put to it. So I just pray that it speaks to you in whatever way you need, and may you continue to be encouraged to know that the light, the dark, cannot hide from the light. The light is always going to shine bright. It's always going to be made known. It's always going to expose all of the yuck that might be in this evil world. And I believe all things will work for good according to those who are called to His purpose. I pray that you have an amazing week. I pray that you would find hope in this message, that it speak to you in however you need. And I'm always thankful to the opportunity to bring you a message of God's truth and hope and light.